What's going on, my babies? Welcome back to another episode of The Spiritual Word. As always, I apologize for any noises in the background in advance and anything of that nature. So, in today's episode of The Spiritual Word, I'm going to be talking about how to get to a place where you feel kind of safe or a little bit more comfortable being yourself. So, first off, let me just state what I've experienced in my reality, and obviously take everything that I say with a grain of salt because I'm not in your life, I'm not in your shoes. And I also got to start these off with a disclaimer by stating that these are for entertainment purposes only. Always do your own research, come to your own conclusions, to have your own answers, to make your own decisions. And I believe in your ability to be your own person and to do all those things. So, something that I want to start off by stating is just that usually what I've experienced in my personal life is that if I was scared to be myself around somebody, it was because I was scared of their reaction or I was scared of not being accepted by them. And most of the time when I was scared to be myself, like alone, was because I was scared of being judged, but there was nobody there to judge me. And so I've spent like a good 3 years just trying to be alone and trying to accept all the parts of me that I refused to accept for as long as I've, tried to neglect those parts of myself. And I got to a point where I was able to actually sit down and be myself. Which I'm not saying that I've never been myself and that, it's just all a ruse and blah blah blah, but I've been at this point where I suppress certain parts of myself for people to feel safe around me, for people to feel comfortable around me, for people to accept who I am, for people to not judge me, for people to not, have these misconceptions. And I've tried to protect myself as much as I could. And I think that obviously that wasn't helpful towards me because I got to a point where I'm like, okay, I made all the wrong choices. I made all the wrong friends just because nobody is here sitting down giving a fuck about what I want to do today. Nobody's sitting down with me and being like, okay, let me get to know you on a deeper level, even though we're just friends. Let me get to know you on a deeper level, even though we're just family. Nobody is really interested in other people as much as I'm interested in other people. If I'm your friend, I want to know everything about you. Everything. I want to know your fears, your hopes, your dreams, your doubts, your misconceptions, all the things that frustrate you, which is not something that a lot of people do unless it's your best friend or if it's somebody that you're trying to be close to. And I want to be close to all of my friends as much as I can, and I want to be close to all of my family as much as I can, just because I want to experience that level of just knowing somebody. And I think it's really cool to get to know somebody, and I think it's really interesting because people are just really interesting, and it's something that I've always it's excited me to do that, and it's always been something that I've really, really enjoyed. I love getting to know people. And for a long time, I stood back in my own personality and I was like, okay, why do I like to do that? Is it because I don't talk about myself and so I want to get to know other people, or is it because no one does that to me and I want to experience that, so I'm doing that through another person's experience? Or am I doing that because I genuinely just want to know the person? And a part of me was like, I think I just want to have that experience for myself, but I'm trying to experience it through another person. And the only reason that I'm trying to do that through another person is because nobody does that to me. And then I sat there and just reflected on that, which to me I was like, that's depressing, holy fuck, nobody is that interested in me to get to know me like that. And then I realized that there is people who do try to get to know me, and I just stop it at the root. I wouldn't say that it's that deep, but when my parents ask me if I want to go do something with them, I'll cut them off and be like, why would I want to go do something with you guys? No, I don't want to do that. And I've realized that I've kind of closed myself off from other people, so they don't really want to get to know me. Or it's not that they don't want to get to know me, it's more they're scared to open that door because they think that I'm gonna slam it in their face. And I think that was something that like I worked on heavily this past year, just because I realized that the only reason that I'm not close to people and why I do that specific thing is because I'm not close to myself. And not close to myself in the terms of like I don't love myself, but in the terms that like I don't really ask myself questions that are like really deep, even though I think that like the reason that I don't ask myself questions is because I feel like I know myself. Like I feel like I know what I'm, my favorite thing is. And then I sit back and I'm like, what is my favorite thing? And I can't answer that. And so that was something that I think really helped me get to this place of like living my authentic self. But anyways, I digress because I just like ranted about nothing. So being your authentic self, I think it stems from a place of like accepting yourself and loving yourself and being there for yourself, even in moments of like paralyzing fear. Like most people who have anxiety or depression, they're scared to, commit to something that they truly want to do because they're scared of other people's reactions or their reactions to the situation, or they're scared of the energy that it entails or like that it brings. Like, for example, most people who are really anxious to go make friends because they're like, oh, but like, how do I make friends? Like, oh my gosh. And they overthink it. Then they don't go out and try to make friends because they're scared of the experience itself. And so it kind of stops you from even trying to be yourself before you even get to that point of actually trying to be yourself. And I think that the number one thing that stops everybody is just fear. Like, you're scared of whatever the case may be. Like, you're scared of what other people are going to say or what other people are going to do or what you yourself are going to do or what you have the ability to say that you might mess up or that other people might mess up or some type of judgment. It's either you judging you or other people judging you. And something that I've experienced a lot is like people ask me how I'm so confident. And like I've always gotten this question for a really long time. How are you like so confident? Like I strive to have your confidence. And I'm like, it's not confidence per se, it's just like acceptance of like the reality of the situation. And I'm somebody who's really, really blunt. Like I'm not gonna like sugarcoat anything. Like if I like you, I'm just gonna straight up be like, yo, I like you. And I'm not gonna fake like my feelings towards the situation just to fake it. And if I don't like you, I probably won't say it just because I don't like to be rude, but you'll kind of notice. Like, I'm not gonna go out of my way to go, be buddy buddies with you all the fucking time, especially if I don't like you. Like, you're gonna have to come up to me. And even then, when you come up to me, I'll probably, like give you like really short answers or like not really talk to you. But then again, I don't really talk to everybody, so I can see how like my personality is kind of like, um, it's not misconceived, but it's like misunderstood just because like I barely talk to begin with. So basically, how I get this confident is just by like accepting the fact that like one day I'm literally not gonna be here. Like I'm going to die. So why would I sugarcoat myself for you? Or why would I downplay myself for this moment? Why would I downplay how amazing this moment could be because of somebody else's standards or because of society standards or because of cultural standards or because of the worldly standards? Like all that shit doesn't matter to me. And you kind of have to get to a point, I wouldn't say get to a point where you don't really care about those things, because I think it's really important that you do care about certain things, but you have to like build it up in yourself. Like those values that you create for yourself, I feel like you really have to think about those things and be like, okay, what do I accept in my cultural system that I think is beneficial? And what do I not accept? Like, one of the things that I don't value is like the women male role in relationships. Like, oh, the man goes out and makes the money and then the woman stays home and cooks and cleans and wipes his ass. And I don't really I don't really accept that, just because I feel like free will. Like if you want to stay home, you get to stay home. If he wants to stay home, he gets to stay home. Like, it's all about the choice that you make, and it's not about, okay, it has to be the man because society says that it has to be the man, and it has to be the woman who is taking care of everything else and feeding him and doing whatever the fuck he wants him to do or wants her to do. So, like, I really stepped back and kind of looked at the bigger picture of life and, like, what am I willing to support and what I'm willing to back up and what I'm not willing to back up. And one of the things that's helped me get to a place where I'm like, I don't really care about how other people perceive me, how other people judge me, is one, remembering that I'm gonna die. Because I'm somebody who kind of like seizes the moment, and I feel like it's not the most responsible thing to do, just because I have a very huge personality. I might not show that fully, but I do have a really big personality in the sense that, like, I could really, really be mean if I want to be mean. And I could be really, 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 really nice if I want to be really nice. And, like, I'm just extreme on all sides because I know the sides of me. And so the confidence and how I gain the confidence is simply just through, like, experiences. Like, what am I willing to experience? What am I not willing to experience? For example, if I'm really, really confident and somebody's like coming up to me and they're like judging me face to face, they're like, "Oh, you're a piece of shit." Like, somebody in public is just like, "Oh, you're a piece of shit. Like, you should feel really bad about yourself." Blah blah blah. Here's the reason. Here's a list of why you should feel bad about yourself. I'm not gonna sit there and be like, "Oh my gosh, you're right," because I'm like, "Are you right? Let me sit down and think about it for a little bit." And I'm probably not gonna have a reaction right then and there just because I'm like, maybe that's something I should contemplate. And not for the sake of, like, accepting that person's judgment or accepting that person or needing their validation or whatever, but for me to sit down and really reflect on, like, okay, what did I do in that situation to inflict that? And what was, like, why did they do that? Did they do that for no reason? Like, did I do anything to them? Or did they just, like, have a grudge with me and they never said it and now it's coming out? So the confidence really comes from accepting and knowing the moment for what it is. Like, I don't think that, like, I'm over or that I'm that confident. Excuse me. I don't think that I'm that confident. But I've always had people be like, "Oh, well, you don't care, like, what you wear. You don't care about, like, what you look like. You don't care about, like, all these judgments and all these things that I care about." And I'm like, yeah, 'cause we don't prioritize the same thing. So to you, my prioritization or my organization of my thoughts and my feelings and my actions and the way that I portray myself comes off as confidence to you because we don't have the same problems. We're not prioritizing the same things. And when I have a problem, I prioritize that so I can get through that quicker than to just neglect it and let it grow and grow and grow and build. It's kind of like if you have a house and you never cut the grass, of course the grass is just going to grow and grow and grow and grow until you can't walk through it. And it's something that most people neglect because they're like, "Oh, I don't want to do it. So much work. I'll just get somebody else to do it. I'll pay somebody else to do it." But you can't really do that, like, all the time. And so confidence really comes from you prioritizing what you should prioritize and getting through the fearful things that you're too scared to do. Like, if you're fearful because you think that other people are gonna judge you for whatever the case is, in the moments where you're trying to actually be yourself, like, for example, let's say you're really judgmental about yourself in the form that you're like, "Oh, I don't think that I'm what's a bad thing to be? I think that I'm really weird." Right? Bad, I use that lightly because what is being weird? But let's just pretend that you have a fear of being weird. So you go out with your friends and you're like, "Okay, I'm gonna be weird every chance I get, so I get over this fear." Maybe not every chance you get, but maybe when the time calls for it. Like, when you really feel like, "Okay, I could really say this thing, but I don't want to say this because I don't want to be weird." in that moment, be weird because you want to say it, which means it's some form of true expression that you're having. And something that I've experienced is that, like, you have to know when it's really you expressing yourself. So let's say you go out with your friend and you're like, okay, this is really funny. I could say this really funny thing, but I don't know if this person's going to think that that's weird, but I think it's really funny and I don't care. So in that moment of you not caring, or let's say you do care, you're like, oh, but I care about what this person is going to say or what they're going to think or how they're going to react. And in that moment where you're having that fear arise, because that's what that fear is. That fear is telling you, okay, criticize, 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 criticize all of your thoughts. I'm going to criticize. That's what the fear does. It's like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know if this is gonna work. I don't know. I'm scared, right? And in that moment of fear, you show up for yourself and you're like, okay, but this is something that I actually believe to be authentic. I think it's funny. And if this person thinks that I'm weird for saying it, then that's their perception, and they're allowed to have a perception of me that I don't agree with. And then you say that weird thing. In that moment, you've shown up for yourself in a huge, huge way. And when you keep doing that, you feel more confident enough to keep doing it. And then you get to a point where you're like, okay, like, if this person, let's say you go to like a cafe or something and there's open seating and you say something and somebody across the room is eavesdropping, they're like, that's fucking weird, and like, it's random, and you're like, ew, why are you eavesdropping? And why are you screaming across this place? And you're sitting there and you're like judging this person for judging you. And in that moment, you're like, okay, I see what this is. I need to accept those parts of myself that I'm judging this other person for. And then you say, oh, okay. And that's it. Like, that's the interaction. You just don't feed the interaction any more than it has been. And you accept what is happening, but it doesn't make you scared. And it doesn't shut you down from being yourself still. Like, their judgment doesn't matter. And the more you show up for yourself in that way, the more you'll see yourself being that authentic version of yourself everywhere you go. And another thing that helped me be my authentic self is just doing it everywhere. Like, I'm really, I wouldn't say that I'm wise, but I love to talk. And I love to talk about things that are helpful, because if I'm not talking about things that are helpful, like, what's the point of talking, you know? Not that that's like a bad thing. Like, you can talk about random shit and, you know, I have my moments where, like, my friends are gossiping to me and I'm like, oh my gosh, amazing, the tea, phenomenal. But at the same time, like, I like to talk with a purpose. And I think that it helps me overall be a good person, because I feel like I have a sense of, like, purpose. I'm like, oh, this purpose or this function has this purpose or this function. Like, I'm talking for the sake of, like, giving advice to another person, not just to sit here and blab and to make noises. So I feel like that's another thing that helped. And where was I? I just lost myself. I don't remember where I was because I just tend to ramble. But moral of today's episode is to love and accept yourself, and to really be grateful for the moment that you're having, and to really be your authentic self in those moments, because you don't get those moments back. And you don't want to go through life, you know, judging yourself and judging other people, because not that it's like a bad thing, because we all do it, and, you know, I don't see that as like a bad thing. I only think it's a bad thing if you can't control yourself. Like, I know a lot of people who are very judgmental, but it's not because they're judgmental, it's because they're controlling. Like, they don't understand that they don't have control over other people, so they'll be like, you shouldn't do that, don't do that. Don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. And I'm like, okay, mom, like, relax, you know? So it's not a bad thing, it's just dependent on how you use it. Like, I be judging the fuck out of people all the time, but I don't say it out loud because I don't think that that's beneficial towards them. Unless it really is beneficial towards them. Like if I went up to a controlling person and they're like, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, I'd be like, okay, like you need to calm down because right now you're trying to control me and I am my own human being. I think that you're having an issue right there. But I'm not going to do that all the time because what am I, your therapist? Like that's not my job. And it's not my job to call you out on those certain things. And what if I don't even know? What if I'm just, like stating my own problems and putting them onto you? So I try not to judge people for that sake of like, oh, I'm probably throwing my shit onto them and saying that it's them and saying that I hate them for this reason, but I actually like it's my problem. So I try not to do that and know that it's okay to it's okay to judge yourself, just don't let it run you. Don't let it run you to the ground and try your best to accept yourself because obviously I know that it's hard to do that 100% of the time just because we live in a world where negativity is like huge. Like you experience so much negativity on a day-to-day basis and I don't think anybody is like really ever disgustingly positive every single moment of their waking lives, like from birth till death. So you know, I do have that wiggle room of like cut yourself some slack because life is really hard and you're doing your best, but at the same time, try to be your best version at all times and try to be your realest self at all times and try to release that judgment and that fear of being yourself. Like, there's no reason that you should fear being yourself. And the only reason that you think it's scary is because your emotions are telling you. This is something that I've also experienced. When you're scared of something that doesn't have to do with your specific death, it is because like your animalistic part of you or like the human side of you wants to feel safe. And if other people have a certain belief, you're going to avoid clashing with that belief because you rather be in the safety than to be in the danger zone or whatever the case is, right? Or it'll be vice versa and you're scared to like agree with that person because you're like that's not safety, and so your safety is disagreeing with them, or vice versa where your fear is to not agree with them and to accept their point of view is safety. So kind of break those things down for yourself too, because the only reason that we don't live our authentic self is usually because of some type of fear. Like we're scared of something. We don't know necessarily what that fear is all the time, but if we get down to the root cause of it, we can sit there and be like, okay, I'm scared to be myself because this happened when I was a kid, or because this is my safety, or because this is the danger zone, or because this is the part of me that doesn't feel safe enough to do that, or safe enough to be that, or safe enough to actually express myself, or I don't feel like the world will love and accept me for my authentic self. Whatever the case is. And then once you get to the root cause, you can sit there and be like, okay, I am safe. Most of the time, you're just trying to survive. Even your emotions have that tendency. Most people who experience a lot of fears or hopes, it is that trying to keep them alive. It's like when you live in a fight or flight state, then you don't really realize that you're doing that. Like, you don't really realize that this is your danger zone and you're not willing to cross it because you're scared that some part of you will die. And it's weird to say that because you yourself are obviously not going to die. Like if I went up to somebody and I said a joke and it wasn't funny and I was scared to do that, obviously I'm not going to die from telling a bad joke, But the mind is like, yes, you will. Yes, you will. Yes, you will. Fear, 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 right? Because it's trying to keep you safe. Because if you've experienced something where it felt like really dreadful or really scary to do, like if you're scared of going up in front of a billion people and talking, then when you do that for the first time, you're probably going to be like, oh my gosh, like extremely nervous because your brain is trying to keep you safe. And that's the same thing with your emotions. Like when you experience fear, it's because your body is trying to keep you safe. Your body is trying to keep you from feeling more fear. So what does it do? It's saying, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. That's scary, that's scary. don't go there. But you need to push through that fear and to know that you're safe. Like, you're not gonna die from, being your real self. Like, unless you really are, because you really need to have discernment. Like, there's people in like Japan who they still don't accept gay people. And, places like in Mexico where they don't accept gay men because who knows? Like, really it comes down to your situation, your circumstance. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. But if you're somewhere where you can be safe, those are usually the reasons why you don't feel safe still. So I'm in this here just because it went over 25 minutes, and I always try not to do that. But it's okay because it happens and it's life. So with that being said, thanks for tuning in and tapping in. I upload Mondays and Fridays. Well, Monday through Friday. I don't know why I said Mondays and Fridays. I think I'm just used to that. But I upload Monday through Friday. And if psychology, spirituality, self-help, self-growth, science is something that you're interested in, then I recommend subbing or following whatever platform you're on. And as always, thanks for tuning in and tapping in. It's been, the spiritual word. And I will see you in the next one. Peace.